we've printed 5 billion Bibles on a printing press. And when I speak, I often say, we owned that printing press as Christians, as the church, as evangelicals. We own that press. But then social media comes along and we almost run from it.
You mentioned that if you're going to be involved in missions, that media has to be a part of that. Explain that to me.
Yeah, it's just how we get the message out, right? And so people always say we're in a sight and sound generation. I disagree with that. And people would say, well, what are you talking about? How can you disagree with that? Everyone's on their phone. I say we've always been a sight and sound generation. God created us that way. When you're born, you start learning by visual, and then you start hearing. And when it comes to reading, it comes later in life in your brain development. And much of the world still doesn't read, or they choose not to read. My son can read, but he doesn't read as much as I read when I was his age. And so we have always been driven to be sight and sound. And media is important. And Richard taught me that storytelling was important. And he was just a master at storytelling. And I think God gives us tools that we can use to reach people. And if you think about it, in the 1400s, Johannes Gutenberg invents the Gutenberg press, right? And we all know that story. Well, we probably also know the very first book he printed on that press was the Bible, and it's known as the Gutenberg Bible, a priceless book today, even the physical copy of the book. And then, we've printed 5 billion Bibles on a printing press. And when I speak, I often say, we owned that printing press as Christians, as the church, as evangelicals. We own that press. But then social media comes along and we almost run from it, right? We don't own it. And so we say, how do we use media? If there are 7 billion of these around the planet, how do we use these as our distribution method? How do we take media and we push it out? And I just don't think we can ignore it. I think they're tools God has given us to accomplish the Great Commission.
This episode of Rapid Response was brought to you by CTC Math. Visit them at ctcmath.com today.